My job for the rest of the day is to introduce our lovely guests from different parts of the world. And the first two guests that I'd like to introduce are Lisa Downs and Owen Connolly from St Andrew's Youth Resource Centre in the inner city in Dublin. But Owen is actually joining us from South Korea today. So he's going to tell us a bit about his experience of being active and engaged in St Andrew's Youth Resource Centre. So Owen and Lisa, I know Owen, you're going to speak first, and then Lisa, you'll just add if you have anything to add. My job is also to keep the time, so I might just give you a 2-minute warning in terms of when your time is up, and then we'll save some time at the end for some questions and answers. So I'm sure everybody will be very interested in what you have to say, and we'll have some really interesting questions. So I just noticed that Chloe Nagel has joined us in the last couple of seconds. So Chloe, you're very welcome too. And I will introduce you a little bit later on. Okay, so over to you, Owen.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Owen, and as was said, I have been involved in St Andrews doing Erasmus projects for a long time. So I have a lot to get through, so I'll get started straight away. So I'm first going to start with my overview of my journey with Erasmus and how it's brought me to where I am now. So my first exchange was in Ireland, and it was a hosting exchange focused on cultural sharing. And it originally got me interested in doing Erasmus projects. Now, I was quite young at the time, maybe 15, and I only got accepted on it because someone dropped out. So I didn't even know about it. So it was a bit of a luck, really. So after I'd done that, I was more interested. So my second and third exchanges were in Finland and Spain, Madrid. And these exchanges were under 18 and were focused on, again, cultural exchange and learning from other people, other young people and their organizations in their countries. So again, brilliant exchanges, great for sharing each other's ideas. Then in 2015, I done the Stay Human program exchange, part 1, and that was in Italy. And it was my first over 18 exchange. It involved bringing young people together, leadership training, and connecting with the local people. We had a multicultural event in the local town of Gandalino, and that was organized by the young participants. All of that was organized, so it was very good. In 2016, I went to Genoa, Italy, for a program called Picture of You, Picture of Me. And this project involved learning about and working with groups who are discriminated against in society. So participants created an exhibition by working with and talking to people who are migrants, homeless, and part of the LGBTQ plus community. So yeah, it was a really, it was a great exchange to do because we got to talk to their organizations and find out how they help these people in society, and it was very powerful, So the next one I done was called Stay Human, and it was the part 2 of Stay Human, and this one was in Lithuania in 2017. This project was about hate speech and learning to challenge racism and stereotypes in everyday life, and that was a very eye-opening exchange as well on a very deep topic. So the next one I done was later in 2017, and this exchange was called Time to Reconnect, and this was hosted in Valencia. And this exchange was all about reconnecting with nature, the environment, other people, and ourselves. So again, another really deep, talking about really deep issues and very eye-opening for me. So the most recent project I've been involved in is called While We Wait. And this is Lisa, our friend Mark, and myself have been involved in organizing, leading, and applying for this project. So it's a virtual exchange, which is with 2 future planned meetings. We don't know when, but well, we have an idea, but it may change. And it's focused on the current pandemic and how it is affecting our lives in different countries. And although it is isolating us, the pandemic is we are all connected by the same issues and challenges we face in everyday life. So that's a kind of brief run through of all my journey so far. So there's been a lot of progression. So as you can see, like I went from, young cultural exchange programs, which got me the taste. And as it went on, I done more deeper political, social issues, exchanges that was around that. And now I'm at a stage where, I'm helping to apply and organize and lead and taking more of that role. So it was a nice progression to do that. And all of these exchanges were so beneficial to me in many ways. So now I'm going to go on to how it impacted me personally. So all of these exchanges on my journey. So it developed me as a person in many positive ways. So I'm more confident with my public speaking and leadership skills. I'm more open-minded, socially active, and eager to learn more about other countries and their cultures. My past Erasmus experiences gave me the confidence to study abroad on Erasmus in Malta for 1 year. So when I was studying in Trinity, I'd done 1 year abroad in Malta. And if it wasn't for my past experiences, I don't know if I would have had the courage to do that. So during my year there, I learned a lot and grew as a person. So because of my past projects, I'm more involved with St. Andrews, my local youth centre. And even now, I'm doing a project while we wait from the other side of the world in Korea. So it shows how that connection is still there from, miles and miles away, So my last point is, why is it positive for young people? So it is youth-led and involves independent and experiential learning, with everyone contributing and volunteering to help. That's what these atmospheres of these projects are like. They're very like, everyone can chip in. So it is different to the education that you get in school and even university, I would argue, because you're learning in a non-conventional way. So instead of a teacher teaching you and telling you what to do, you discover for yourself how to learn. And you learn from chatting with other people that you would never have the chance to talk to before, like people from different countries. So it's not conventional to the usual education system. You're also talking about different issues, like social issues and cultures and topics that you would not learn in school originally. Well, I didn't anyway, for sure. And that was so refreshing for me. So another point I would like to make is that it opens the minds of young people, and it can lead them onto a really positive track for personal development, like it did for me. So importantly, like, young people can become more socially active citizens in their local areas and around the world, because it gives them that eagerness to travel and to see other places. For example, in relation to social activism, environmental awareness, volunteering, and many other areas where they will become more interested through doing these Erasmus Plus projects. So I think these projects are incredible. I can't rave about them enough. And I think every youth organization and its young people would benefit from these experiences. So I'd really recommend people try to get these projects running in their local organizations. So yeah, that's just me. I've done a quick run through. So thanks for listening. And I hope I didn't bore you too much. But yeah, Lisa is going to speak now about her experiences. So thank you.
Okay, so Lisa, if you want to unmute yourself and maybe just to say, Owen, you certainly didn't bore us. You have a very colourful experience of Erasmus Plus and you sell it very well. So thank you for that. Lisa, I'll give you the floor now and then we'll summarise at the end.
Janice, thank you. Well, I don't really know what to say following from Owen. I think he sort of summarised it really well from the perspective of a young person. So hi, I'm Lisa. I'm one of the youth workers in St. Andrews Resource Centre, and I've been working there for 12 years. How I'm going to look at it really is from a broader perspective, not just focusing on one programme, and really looking at the sort of ladder of progression and leading young people to become more engaged and taking more of a responsibility and taking more ownership of some of the programmes that we have run, and just really just from my perspective and what we've done. I think so, like, the objectives is, to accomplish young people's needs, to offer them to opportunities to engage in programs from my perspective. And I think there's two key elements to that. It's offering young people a space, and the possibilities by empowering them to take the ownership, which actually leads to long-term positive engagement. And I think that's key. Two elements that I would say that has made the work that I've done with young people, I guess, successful, if I want to use that word, is the forming of positive relationships with young people. Because I think if we want young people to engage, we have to build that relationship up. We have to look at young people from maybe some starting with, going from dependence to interdependency. And I think that's really key as we, as youth workers and youth leaders, because this enables young people to actually to continue to take ownership and shape their own lives and the lives of others, and actually start working on the programs that they really would like to. So what is the role of the youth worker? Like, an important aspect of working on the Erasmus programs is active participation of young people. A key, I think, to all of this is starting where the young people are at. So sometimes actually starting where they're young, like where they're at, and making sure that, we form that relationship and talk to young people. So setting the conditions, offering young people a platform to have a voice, offering young people a safe space to be able to explore that. And this endeavours to lead not only just to active engagement, but also to longevity. And as you can see by Owen, that was like, a really key thing. He starts at 15, and then he actually is now writing programs like for stuff that he really believes in. And also, I think for young people to engage, we need to acknowledge the different levels that the young people were working with and working for. We need to acknowledge them as individuals. We need to look at, like, where's their skills, their attributes, their qualities, and we need to work alongside young people in this manner. And then, to focus down really what will result in a positive outcome. So I guess when I was sort of thinking about this and looking at this, I wrote some notes about what's the practice of building, what's a good practice of building a safe space and working in an inclusive way. So I think to start with, and I keep saying this, is ensuring young people are provided with a space, an inclusive space to engage and express their own views. Ensure that the steps are taken that all young people can take part. And paramount is when we start that young people's voices are heard. And we're facilitating that with the tools that we have to equip young people to take that action themselves and be involved. And actually to make sure that the young people's views, ideas, opinions and thoughts are taken seriously. It's not just tokenistic. So, again, I'm reiterating that actually our job is to facilitate that and to work with young people and to build that relationship so that young people can progress and really be listened to.
Lisa, I'm going to just give you a 1 minute warning, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other thing, I think that what I was thinking about is really, when we're working with young people, I'm going to scrap my notes now, I was looking at sort of continuity and continuation. So not just offering young people singular programs and being there and being the door to opportunities, because often young people don't know about certain things that are out there. And having that space to offer young people them opportunities, and then allowing the young people to actually run with it. And I think that's a really good starting point for active engagement, because then the young people take ownership. They're empowered to actually, say, this is mine and this is what we want to do. And actually then, even though often when we start, they're a little bit skeptical of, maybe as Owen said, looking at the political or justice issues, but it's very quick, they actually think, this is a space I can do that and I am heard. So it's really, for me, the two key elements of engaging with young people and that they're actually actively engaged and leading to longevity is really building and forming a relationship where the young people are the core of that and making them decisions and planning. And that actually young people are involved from the start. That even we make sure we know our partners and we all have the same values and ethos. That it's not just come along, on an exchange and then you go home. And it's looking at what's the outcome, and follow up. What can we do after these programs? How can we do stuff in our local communities? I'm very conscious that I don't want to go over time. I could talk on this issue for hours. But really, that's my experience. It's really about starting where the young people are at and offering that space to facilitate it.
Brilliant. Fantastic, Lisa. And I'm sorry to have to stop you. We could
Nope.
listen. You said you could talk all day. We could listen to yourself and Owen all day. I see a hand up. I'll come to you now in 1 second, Monica, just to say that I could see people nodding as you were both speaking, and what you've said this morning definitely resonates with people, this, you know, in terms of the discussions that they've already had. So Monica has a question. I'll open the floor now for questions. We have a couple of minutes. Monica, you're first.
It wasn't a question, it was clapping. Thank you.
Ah, it was a clap. Okay. Brilliant. So the floor is open for questions. Mika has one. Are you clapping, Mika, or asking a question? Or you're clapping as well? Okay.
I have a question for Owen. Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand, actually. How do I do that? I think I see it. That's actually clapping or thumbs up. Okay, anyway.
Go ahead.
Owen, I was wondering, you were involved in these projects that were like social, political, dealing with race, hate speech, environmental issues. It's like the whole spectrum. Were you interested in all of these things before you got involved, or did you get sucked in and then your interest came out of them?
I think I had a bit of an interest. Like I was definitely someone who was interested in social, political, environmental issues. But I think they just expanded my interest even more. So like I would say I was interested, but I can imagine even if I had an inkling, because I think like these issues affect everyone. So someone can find an interest in it anywhere. But after doing these projects, the details that we were like exposed to, I guess, like, you know, for example, talking to me and Lisa were in the same group in Genoa. So talking to someone who was like a homeless person in Genoa, it's such a specific detail that would never ever happen in any other circumstance. So it just gave me a much wider knowledge and interest in places that I would have never before. So I guess to answer your question, yes, I was interested, but it just gave me even more of an eagerness and want to learn more because of the things I was being exposed to was just so like unique, you know.
Thanks so much. Can I maybe ask one follow-up question, which is if there are young people out there who are not already interested, but like you said, these issues are relevant for everyone, then how do we as youth workers like reach them, find them, engage them? Would you have any advice or insights for us on triggering the interest?
Oh yes, that's a great point, because there's a lot of people, you know when I've experienced it, like even a lot of my friends, like I come from a place where like it's sometimes hard to get people to be interested in these issues, but I think the best way to get them involved, I think Lisa touched on it a lot, is to get them involved from the start. So like, you know, if you're going to run an exchange, you know, or you're going to apply for an exchange or create a topic for an exchange, an Erasmus Plus program, get the young people in to talk about what they care about and what they think is a problem in their local community, or what they think they'd like to learn more about. Because even if people don't know it yet, like young people don't know it yet, a lot of the issues that they may be experiencing in their everyday lives are issues that you can kind of talk about with other people and generate for them. So I would say, I guess, get young people in to speak about things and get them to learn from one another what they begin to care about. And then with something like an Erasmus Plus, find a project which is in relation to that, or create a project which is what the young people have a care for. Because I think anyways that most young people do have like something they care about. Everyone does. It's just about how to, if you get them in speaking about it, and kind of like not showing them, but facilitating their own discovery of, oh, I actually care about this issue. I see homeless people in the street all the time, or yeah, I don't like what I see on television about like pollution in places, or So I guess, yeah, get people to come in and talk about it. And then from that, you can try and facilitate their own discovery of what really drives them, you know?
Thanks, Owen. That's a really good answer. I'm conscious that we have 2 more questions, one from Stuart and then the second one is from Andrea. And it's probably all we'll have time for in terms of questions for this section. So Stuart, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, my question is to Owen mainly, but Lisa might be able to do it. What group were you in initially that you did these exchanges? Was it through St Andrews and their programs? And how did they offer those exchange programs that you were involved with? I mean, some people here are obviously youth workers and they're trying to develop programs, but how do you get them in to talk to them? Owen said then he wants to, you know, they should be open to those and opportunities. How do you get them in the first place? Are they invite groups, or is it a school, or do you go around to places? How do you do that?
Well,
I guess, yeah,
go on,
Lisa,
sorry.
you can answer. Yeah, go, Lisa, you answer this.
Well, I mean, because we're a youth project, we would, you know, be working with young people all of the time. So we would be offering young people opportunities and saying, look, this has come, somebody's asked us to do a partner, an Erasmus program, and this, is anybody interested? But also, I'll give you an example. We had a young man who was a part of an LGBT group, and they were saying there's really nothing in the community. So he sort of instigated, in many respects, this idea of let's reach out to the community. And then from that, we actually got involved in one of the Stay Human programs looking at LGBT rights. So it's a real mix. Sometimes it's just you have young people already and they might start talking about something and say, well, can we carry that forward? Or sometimes we might get an invite to something and you might just put a call out to young people and say, look, we've been asked, would be interested. What do you think? We're not signing up without your sort of approval. So it really varies. And the very first program that I did actually was, I did a training course. I met some partners and we got talking, and that's how we sort of created a program and said, shall we ask some of our local young people if they'd be interested? So I don't know if that answers your question, because it's a mix of how sometimes it's young people that have already expressed an interest that want to do something. Sometimes somebody will come and knock on our door and say, we're interested, would you be? And then we'll put it to the young people. And let's be really honest about this. A great initiative, a great carrot for young people and for us as adults, for anybody, is that actually you're going to get an opportunity to travel. You're going to get an opportunity to go to another country and also invite people to possibly your country too. So it's a good incentive and it's a good starting point. Not every young person starts with, I want to be political or I want this. Some young people, and we've seen it, just like the idea of, I've got an opportunity maybe to go to Spain or Italy, and they come back on a buzz that I can't explain. They really then want to get involved with more. I hope I answered your question.
And Stuart, thank you for the really good question, because inclusion is not always easy. And that whole question of how do you involve the young people from the start is really important. So we'll take the last question now, and I've just typed in the chat box, if other people have questions and we can't answer them now, if you type them in, and we will ask Lisa and Dawn and the other speakers for answers to the questions later if we can't provide them now. So we'll take the last question now from Andrew before we move on. Andrew, I can't hear you. No, still can't.
Yeah, and you're not unmuted.
Andrew, do you want to type your question in the chat, and then maybe Owen or Lisa can pick it up? And if we can have no more than a 2-minute response, that would be good. Okay, so the question is, what kind of channels do you use to advertise your initiatives? So,
I hope I'm understanding the question. So we wouldn't like we had like we wouldn't necessarily advertise the initiatives. If we're doing programs, we would talk to the young people we're already engaged with, or we would go to our local school or go to our local communities and say what we're doing. And then if there's so for example, then if the initiative is, so if it's a campaign, so we did it from one of the youth exchanges, we end up having a big campaign called Dear Me. So we would use our Facebook page. We did an exhibition, and we sort of launched this exhibition around Dear Me. It came from the LGBT youth exchange, where they did a postcard campaign. But to advertise, I think we're in, unfortunately, we're in a good situation where we have connections with all of our local young people. We're a local based project, and so we work closely with our local community. So I don't know if I'm answering your question in accordance to what you're asking, so I apologize.
I think what I heard you say, Lisa, is that sometimes it's targeted referrals, sometimes it's the relationships with the community, and other times it's through the young people you work with.
Themselves, so,
hopefully. Okay, so thank you to Lisa and Owen, and I'm sure it's okay to ask further questions later if people are putting them in the chat. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce Chloe Nagel from the Young Critical Thinkers group. And I will take the same approach as Lisa. I'm going to give the floor to Chloe, and I'll only add anything additional if necessary. So Chloe, you have 10 minutes. Is that okay? So Chloe, dear, we can't hear you. No, we can't hear you. So does anybody have any suggestions for Chloe in terms of what she might try? I mean, you're not on mute, so.
Try turning it off and on again.
Yeah, she might just leave the room and come back.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it's a problem.
Or if there's a volume switch on whatever instrument she's using.
Exactly. I'll send her a little text and tell her that she could have her volume turned down. And this lady is a Zoom expert, so I'm not sure why it's not working for her. Okay. So try volume. So I'll just let Chloe back into the room, and hopefully this is going to work. Hi, Chloe, welcome back.
No.
Oh, Chloe, it's not working. Chloe, why don't you try the volume on your laptop? Maybe it's something to do with that.
Or try possibly the earphones. If you're using earphones, try to take them out. That could be an issue. I've experienced that.
That's, spot on. So.
Can we ask Owen more questions in the meantime?
Let's just see. Oh, poor Chloe. I wonder, do you know what I could do? I could call Chloe on my phone, and you probably could hear her through my speaker. Would that work? Will we try that?
I don't know. Would not do. She's doing something now. Oh.
I think it's on already.
Okay, Chloe, it's working out for you now, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, good.
Straight with technology, as you can tell.
Okay,
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Chloe. So just a brief rundown, I suppose. In secondary school, in fourth year, I was a part of the Aspire 2 program that was run by DPS Engineering that gave kind of support to, at the time it was only 4 deaf schools, 2 in Cork and then 2 in Dublin. And then I graduated in 2017 and I joined the Inspire 2 alumni. And then kind of after the leaving cert, we all just kind of got together and we collectively thought to ourselves, well, that was a bit stressful and we don't really like that. What can we do about it? So in 2017 and 2018, we applied for a KA3, which is support for policy reform, I believe. And we applied for that twice and we gracefully got rejected for it. And then in 2019, we applied for a KA2, which is the same thing, but we kind of joined together with partners from both Finland and Macedonia. So then in April, we had a meeting in Finland, which was very exciting at the time because none of us has ever been to Finland. And we kind of really learned about their education system because, you know, Finland is world renowned for having a great education system. And we kind of observed some really interesting things because, for instance, in Ireland, we have kind of a 5-tiered education system. So you have FÁS, you have DEIS, you have semi-private, then you have private, and then you have like the big fancy boarding school that everyone, like politicians' kids, go to and stuff. And we noticed that in Finland, it's literally just a 1-tiered system, so everyone is completely equal, which we were like, that is absolutely incredible. And then over there, we got to visit a vocational school. So a little bit like us, we have kind of our core subjects, like Irish, English, maths, and another language. But over there, they have that kind of core subjects and stuff when they're 15. And then when they're 15, they can choose if they want to go into like a more academic kind of role where it will be kind of similar to kind of Ireland schooling, or they can choose to go to a vocational school, which is a lot more practical. So for instance, when we went over there, there was courses for hairdressing, there was courses for even waitressing and bartending. And we thought that was absolutely incredible because, you know, not everybody wants to be an academic. So you kind of get trained up into your job. And then when you graduate, then you have this absolutely incredible job and you're trained for it, sorry. And then in June, we went to Macedonia. So we decided to partner with Macedonia because we thought it would be very interesting to kind of observe and learn from an education system that most people aren't familiar with at all. And what we learned from that mostly is their grading systems. So they have more of a kind of continuous assessment based approach, whereas 60% of their grades, overall grades, will come from their schooling. So like their summer exams, their autumn exams, their Easter exams, etc., etc. And then 40% then is kind of the final exam, whereas, you know, in Ireland, our final exam is worth 100% of our grade. And it was quite interesting as well, like talking to them about the Irish education system because they kind of looked at us in horror. They were like, what? Like, that's so much pressure that you're putting young people on. And we said, absolutely. So we worked mostly with students from the Inspire 2 program. Now it expanded to, I believe, 6 schools at the time in 2019. And then along with that, we had in October of 2019, we had a big conference in Ballyfermot Library where we got to discuss our findings with some TDs, with some principals, teachers, and also some students. So it made such like an interesting dialogue, and just in general, people felt that it wasn't okay, the Leaving Cert needed to be reformed. We also did some of our own research with surveys and kind of looking for news articles. So we really discovered that the Leaving Cert has been linked to anxiety and stress among young people. And then also, and quite tragically, it has been linked to some suicides, which is an absolute disgrace in my opinion. But then we also did surveys among many people, among many ages and age groups, and we discovered that like 70% of them or more, I can't remember the statistic now, out of respondents of about 400 wanted continuous assessment as a form of examination. Yeah, and I really enjoyed being a part of it because the education system has always been something that I've been heavily ridiculing since I was kind of in primary school. And yeah, it was fun to learn about different education systems and learn from people's experiences. Yeah.
Thank you, Chloe. Sorry to have to stop you. And again, it's very significant that Chloe should be talking about the Leaving Cert reform today at a time when, for the first time ever, we have results announced in a very, very different way based on continuous assessment. So I'm not exactly sure if Chloe is gone. Oh, there you are, Chloe.
Oh.
So we're going to open the floor now for a couple of questions. And yeah, so maybe I can see everybody. So just maybe raise your own hand if you want to ask a question. No questions for Chloe. Mika has a question. So unmute yourself, Mika.
Hi, Chloe.
Hi.
I've done a fairly similar project years ago. And for me, and I think for some people afterwards, we felt we had so little impact with it. And we don't really know what went wrong because we invited a lot of people. Do you feel that you had impact, that actually the findings you found that are going to go somewhere?
At the time, definitely, because we even did some radio interviews where like people in general of the public were like, no, it needs to be changed. And I think now more than ever, particularly due to the unfortunate climate of COVID, it kind of does prove that Ireland is not really as prepared as other countries to particularly help their students. So hopefully, after all of this, politicians will actually kind of listen to students rather than themselves.
And if I can add to that, I think, Mika, the two maybe most powerful pieces of impact was, number one, that the students around Ireland had an opportunity to have their voice heard in relation to what the Leaving Cert exam structure is like for them. And secondly, at a policy level, we had an opportunity to make a submission to the National Curriculum Review at the time. So those recommendations that were found by the young people were fed into the National Curriculum Review as well. And I'm sure they influenced the process in some way. So any other questions?
That's brilliant to hear because
Yeah.
it makes such a difference when you actually feel you actually really have an impact with it.
Exactly, yeah. So Caitlin has a question.
I only didn't ask right away just because I didn't want to be taking over and being the one who's talking too much, but I do actually have two questions for Chloe. I wondered if when you organized your two KA3 applications and then you finally landed on the KA2, was it just you young people writing these big applications, or did you link up with some organizations and get some support? How did you manage all that?
We had help with Janice, of course, and then also a woman called Nicola Quinn. She used to work with us as well, so we had help with two of them.
Yeah, but maybe just to say, the application was workshopped with the young people.
Oh yeah.
Some of them were involved in writing some of the technical parts of the applications, but a really good way to make sure that they have ownership and that they have input is to workshop all of the different key questions from the application, and then one person can take responsibility to submit it. But they were really persistent. Like Chloe said, they got rejected twice and they could have said, okay, this is enough, and they didn't. So they applied third time lucky, and yeah, it was a very powerful experience for us as well as them.
That's brilliant. Well done. Just one last quick question about the conference that you held in Ireland. How did you feel that you were received by I assume you had some maybe more academic people or teachers, people working in policy, educational policy. Did you feel they really listened to you? Did they learn something new from you?
We were very lucky in the sense that everyone that showed up was quite open-minded, and they were really understanding, and they were there to learn, and they were there to kind of listen to the voices of young people. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, we thought the biggest impact would be with the different, local policymakers. And in fact, the feedback was that the biggest impact was probably at local level in the communities, in the schools of where the students attended, because they had all this evidence-based research of young people's voices actually saying, this is the impact that this exam structure has on us. This is how it makes us feel. And it wasn't just about identifying the problem. They were also giving them, look, here are some possible solutions. So I think today will tell a really interesting story in Ireland in terms of, there's already talk that have the results been inflated? My answer to that question would be no, they haven't been inflated. For the first time, young people have probably been assessed in a fair way. So we'll see what happens. So I don't want to be biased. We're out of time. And if people have other questions for Chloe or for me, you can type them in the chat. And that brings us to nearly the end. And I'm going to do what the teacher does and give you some homework. So I'll just share my screen now for a minute. And okay, can everybody see my screen? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So basically what we would like you to explore, not on your own, but maybe in the organizations that you're in and with the young people. So what are the values that you need as a youth worker to empower young people to become active and engaged? So hopefully the conversations that you had this morning and listening to the various speakers give you some ideas about that. And I know some of you do this type of work already. So do these values support or contradict your current way of working with young people? So sometimes these trainings are a real eye-opener for organizations. We realize that actually the values that we preach on a daily basis are not necessarily the values that we have in our organizations day to day. And that's okay, because that's why we attend trainings to be enlightened and to learn different things. So what values does your organisation currently provide to support the engagement or empowerment of young people? And what new values does your organisation need to adapt to support the young people to be active and engaged? And finally, please familiarise yourself with Jamboard. You've used it twice today already, and well done. Everybody used it very well. It was a new experience for us too. Any final questions before I'll just stop. We will email this homework to everybody, so don't worry about writing things down or remembering. You'll get it by email at some stage today in advance of the next session.